Welcome to Prevention Leaders Podcast with Dave Clausen, your source for insights into the world of substance misuse prevention. Each episode, Dave brings you the latest strategies, expert discussions, and real-life success stories designed to empower your work and inspire impactful change. Whether you're a prevention professional, community advocate, or simply passionate about making a difference, this podcast will keep you informed and motivated. Get ready to lead with a confidence that drives lasting results. Let's lead the change together.
All right, folks, we're back again for another episode, and we've got a returning guest because he's become a good friend and colleague that I look up to, I turn to for advice, and oh my gosh, our conversations are always so fascinating. And so, folks, I want y'all to get together with me and welcome Joel back to the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. We're turning it loose, man.
I know, unfiltered, untapped,
Uh-oh.
Buckle up, folks. Even if you're walking, buckle up. But could you give us just sort of a Cliff Notes highlight reel of sort of who you are and what you do, please?
Yes, I am. My name is Joel Bennett. I am the president, CEO of a company, Organizational Wellness and Learning Systems, OWLS. We give a hoot. I've been doing research and development and consultation in well-being, primarily for adults and providers and workplaces, using evidence-based approaches. We've been acknowledged by the Surgeon General in their Facing Addiction America report. We had 3 programs in the National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices, and we work with a number of associations throughout the country to promote education of adults, whether professionals or direct employees. We also are strongly embedded with the SAFE project, Stop the Addiction Fatality Epidemic, where we designed and deliver a program on military and veteran wellness. And we've done a number of projects with the National Guard. So we work broadly with adult prevention.
All right, wonderful. And folks who didn't catch it, Joel knows prevention. He knows evidence-based prevention, and he knows, how to make prevention work. So I kind of want to just jump right in and talk about that and hone in on adult prevention. Because before we hit record, one of the things that we chatted about, and then sort of in my words, so we see so much prevention focused on youth, but then we, for lack of a better phrase, release them out into adulthood, into the quote, air quote,
Go
real world,
right?
Go forth and thrive. Yet there's no prevention for that adult or that part of the population, yet we expect them to thrive. Thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of rhetoric around comprehensive, prevention across the lifespan, whoever it is these days. And it's just that. I mean, it's not putting your money where your mouth is. Not that there's a lot of money to go around these days, but the truth is there's a laundry list of reasons why that's a problem. Number one, children live with parents who, no matter what they learn in school or for prevention, those parents might be using, abusing, misusing, whatever you want to call it. And it blunts whatever impact you might be having. And I'm not talking about, serious. I'm talking about moderate use even can send messages. That's number one. Number two, those parents work in workplaces that are not providing them with science-based prevention. It's sometimes health promotion, a wellness program, but they don't generally touch. They may say they're touching mental health. Number three, employee assistance programs, which are probably the most widespread and have the greatest return on investment of any program for the workplace under benefits, are underutilized, significantly underutilized and not promoted because benefits design doesn't put them in a position to be utilized. And so, but there are other factors that are at the community and social determinants level So I have long thought that what's happening here is the field of prevention has become parentified. It's like, oh, let's do it for the kids. And I'll go into this field because of my own background as a provider, and I'm going to help, right? But we're not really growing. We're not really evolving. We're stuck in a loop of trying to always help children and communities. But if you look at the national data, I would argue that, let's say prevention has been around, what, 30, 40 years at best, if we want to talk about it. Has it really made a dent? You know, that's the argument. And so there's a lot of reasons for that, but that's why it's important that we start really being more serious about reaching adults, not just parents, but anybody who is in that transition, especially the 18 to 25-year-olds. We've done projects specifically for emerging adults. And that's such a critical time that is also an area of vulnerability, but also a time where people who may have never used as a child, they start using. And they don't have prevention anymore. Instead, they have bosses who say, hey, let's go for a drink. Or whatever it is that's happening, the social norms in the work environment, what we call the drinking culture. So that's why we were also working with the military, because that is a very intransigent drinking culture, as is with first responder populations as well, often have use and also prescription drug misuse. So I hope that kind of hits the mark, maybe.
Yeah. Well, just even thinking about my own story, it was at 18 to 25, and not only layered on top of just being in that higher risk age group, I also had combat trauma, mental health as well. And so I had a lot of cards stacked against me, but I also had a lot of things working for me as well. And when I tapped into those, that's what really helped. Yeah. So I know there is a fairly substantial amount of resources for the college environment as it relates to prevention. So I'm curious, what could prevention look like in the workplace?
Okay, before I answer that, you did something that's really important. You talked about your own story, and in a single couple of sentences, you talked about the risks, but you also talked about the strengths that you got. And that is at the heart of a lot of adult prevention, is getting people to stop. I often say, in fact, for people who are listening, on a scale of 1 to 10, how present are you right now? You're listening to this. You might be listening in your car. You might be going for a walk. You might be dealing with who else knows what's going on in your environment. So distractibility. 1, you're totally tuned out, or totally toned out, whatever it happens to be. 10, you're completely like, oh, what is this guy going to say next? What are they going to talk about? So what's important is that in that moment where you reflected right then on your own life, you took your whole life into consideration in just a sentence, 18 to 25. Oh my God, that was combat. I was in the military. This is what happened. You're reflecting on not just your subjective well-being, you're reflecting on your ontological, there's a word, ontological well-being, your whole life, your life as a project. And what that means is that you say, oh, yeah, I got pretty messed up, but I also got this. So you reflect back in time, you reflect back in the future, and you're starting to look at and have a glimpse of you as a whole person over time. So I want to just acknowledge that you did that.
Yes, well, let's go down and talk about time. Let's do a little left turn or a pivot. I recently did the VA's trauma recovery program, and as we did the dirty work of unpacking my trauma, so I did CPT, cognitive processing therapy, is really sort of what mine was focused around, and we uncovered some moral injury, which was eye-opening and gave a new, deeper understanding of things. But I might have actually been inspired by our last episode where you kind of talked about the quest of presence and time. But I pointed out to my therapist, I said, what I'm kind of looking at things now is if I were to draw a timeline of my life, I'm letting this small sliver create these big impacts for the entirety of my timeline. And it was a 1.5 year deployment. I was in country for a year, yet oh my God, I don't want to say my age. It's I know.
Everybody, he doesn't look an age over 30. You're over 30.
Getting so close to 50. But a 1.5 years of my life was dictating, was driving, was messing with the long,
So you asked the question also, I'll weave it back in because you asked, what does it look like? This is what it looks like. What we're doing right now is what it looks like. So everybody who's listening, it's not a package deal. It's not an off-the-shelf deal. It's about having the space, creating the space to have this conversation. And what's also happened in the field is we've got over-curricularized. There's another fancy word. I'm going to use this program, and this program is going to do X, Y, and Z, and I need to say this then and have these slides and get it. It's all hyper-controlled. What it really comes down to is this conversation that we're having. So you've got to have the confidence in yourself and in your heart to know what intimacy feels and looks like when you're interacting with another person and not worry about imposter syndrome, right? Or perfectionism or all that other stuff. So I just want to say, before we even talk about what it looks like, let's just experience it first. So I first want to acknowledge, wow. So CPT is evidence-based, right? So that's important for people to know that the VA does place a premium on using programs, EMDR, CPT, and other programs. So I'm really excited that you were able to go back and do that. There's a lot to say, there's so much to unpack. The brain during the 18 to 25-year-old period is extremely vulnerable. And there's been a lot written on that. Dan Siegel's book, The Essence of Adolescence, Brainstorm, and other people. So it's a highly vulnerable time. It's not just a highly vulnerable time for people in the military, it's a highly vulnerable time for other people. What we have found in our interactions and through these conversations, that people will join the military or go into a career or go down some sort of career trajectory, in part because of what they did or didn't get as a child. In fact, we recently, and I'll use this as an example, we recently delivered the military wellness program to young adults who are being med-boarded at an Air Force base. So that what happened there was, I'm going to have a great career. And now I broke my ankle. I popped hot on a drug test. I raised my hand and said, yes, I might have suicidal ideation. And they go, guess what? You can't have a career hearing. So we delivered the training to them. And one of the things we discovered is that many of them are like, oh my God, I can't go back home. I don't want to go back there because that's why I'm here. And so we've worked with young adults in the restaurant industry. We've worked with a number of young adults, emerging adults. And that goes, by the way, up till the age of 30. But just to be very clear.
I still don't feel like I'm a full-fledged adult.
Yeah, no, I'm not. So for the rest of you out there who are listening, they're going, I hope you feel good now because you're in the club.
Right.
So yeah, the point is that the whole idea of our life as a project is a continual weaving of the past, present, and future. And one of the major problems is that our culture as a whole is obsessed with the present. The now generation, social media, Netflix, smartphones, they all are geared not toward helping you with the project of your life. They're geared toward grabbing your attention now and figuring out how to do that, when we all know this is happening. So we have, in addition to all the other problems I mentioned earlier, a culture that is set up to promote addiction. And the addiction is not just for children, it's addiction for adults. I mean, we could talk about adult alcohol use and how that has not skyrocketed, but has grown significantly since COVID. When you shared your story, I'm weaving this together, you recognize, yes, there was that time in my life, but now I have a chance to go back and what's discussed in the literature, memory reconsolidation. That's the actual term that's used. Bruce Eckert's work is one of the examples where you go back, you look back at what happened, you figure out this is where you are now because of that, but now you have some options on how to re-narrate that, reinterpret it. So that's what happens when you talk with other people of your age group in an intimate way and have these conversations. It gives you a chance to reflect and think back and to, that did happen to me. So we get to enact ourselves in a new light. And it's something we do every day. It's an ongoing thing. So I'll stop there. I hope I wasn't too rambly, but there was so much that you were saying that I wanted to hit on.
Well, and what I'm kind of pulling out too, when we talk about sort of the workplace, one of the things that I've done quite a bit of work with organizations over the past 2 years is really around culture and creating that workplace culture that is one of belonging, connection, psychological safety, and then sort of pairing with that, the art of conversation, how to have like real conversations, not counseling, not therapy, just conversations that matter.
Yeah. So you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying. So you can ask your own questions. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Your work.
So, one fun example, worked with an organization, brought in a couple of my partners, my teammates, and we facilitated the organization through creating their own culture code, where through participatory processes, they came up with their core pillars or tenets for their culture. And we didn't talk about events and like the grand gestures. It was the random Tuesdays, the everyday operations. What do they want their culture to be, to look like? How will it show up? What will be their accountability process for when things are acting or out of alignment with their culture? And it was about a day and a half, I think, total where we worked with them. And they ended up taking their pillars, printing them off real big on like flip chart size paper, putting them around the office. And it was cool to see that come together. That was just
That's
one little
wonderful.
story.
So do you think that that's prevention?
Yeah, culture is prevention. It can be prevention. It can be both a risk factor and a protective factor.
What I love about that is that it was self-organized, self-generated teamwork, and you were just facilitating it. So that's what prevention, you answered your own question. At least that's one way it looks like. People who do training and development, team building, leadership development, when it's done with a certain amount of intentionality, it has an impact on well-being. And when you look at the literature, we do a lot of work on wellness, organizational wellness, workplace culture, and data, the presentations. One of the core themes that always shows up over and over and over again in any healthy work culture effort is communication, belonging, inclusiveness, social connection, inter-team work, right? Interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary project, collaborative models, participatory management. I mean, it's over and over and over again. It's not sitting behind your computer and working only by yourself. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're Some people, of course, are oriented toward working alone and isolated. However, we know that if you're in a situation where you are at risk for addictive processes, that kind of isolation and aloneness becomes heightened as a risk factor. So these efforts at culture building are one way to fight against that. In all our evidence-based programs, really listening exercises. I just last night yesterday I did 2 trainings, one for managers and leaders and one for ambassadors, wellness ambassadors. And in both cases, we put people in breakout rooms and we have them do different versions of a really listening exercise. Talk about your strengths, talk about which of these areas you're planning on committing to doing to improve your ripple effect as a leader. We even give them script to read to each other as a guidance for calming down techniques in the ambassador case. So there's no lack of tools out there. It's all about stopping, pausing, getting present, taking time to do that, and continually reinforcing that over time. So I don't know. So what that does, though, it goes back to that ontological thing. It's like, okay, wait, I'm not just a cog in a wheel here. I'm not just producing widgets. My employer cares about me enough to give me time to reflect on this. And it doesn't have to happen in courses. It could happen like, hey, let's do something for the community. Let's go down to the food bank. Let's do some volunteer work. Anything that takes us out of the grind.
And so what I'm sort of summarizing is this is that higher level strategy, culture, and some of the tactics to help craft that culture would be the reflection, the activities, the going out in the community. I'm curious how, if, when direct conversations or content related to substances or mental health then come up.
Oh, in many different ways. So we weave, okay, so let's take a step back. When we do workplace prevention, we never say we're coming in and doing workplace prevention. Oh, we wrote a book, edited book for American Psychological Association, I think 2002, called Preventing Workplace Substance Abuse and Beyond Drug Testing to Wellness. And that was, over 20 years ago. And that had 5 different evidence-based programs, not just ours, in there. And every single one of them just never used this as substance abuse prevention. So those models, which are still viable, included the work out of University of Michigan, Max Hyrich and Andrea Foote, which were coaching. So they would go into the work setting. This is just one example. And they would do a wellness screen, like many people do nowadays. And there would be items in there. How much are you using alcohol? Or have you been? And the coach would not in this formal like expert, this is predates expert, but more in a conversation. Well, tell me about that. How is that going for you? And through the wellness coaching as the overarching model, they built this destigmatized trust, and right there on the manufacturing plant floor would give guidance and come back and give guidance again. So it's woven into a general wellness screen. And we actually had a grant from NIAAA to do that electronically, which I can talk about. The other model that came out of Yale with David Snow was a work life ever at all in a kind of like it's more like in the conversation. How we do it in our team awareness, team readiness, team resilience, Ripple, we have a variety of different programs. We bring people together, have the conversation about the culture explicitly. What's it like to work here? What do you think about the culture at large? Would you say the culture supports stress, or does it hurt or help stress? And people start talking. And in the conversation we have with employees together in a group, it just starts surfacing. And at that point, when it comes up, we say, well, here are some tools that you can use. And we point them to the EAP. One of the outcomes we pretty consistently have in our work is reduced stigma for seeking help, greater utilization of the EAP or faith-based or whatever it happens to be for that person, or a community resource or 12-step. And then as a result of that, improved well-being and reductions in problematic alcohol use. We go into the symptoms of stress. How do you cope with stress? Are you coping effectively with stress? What are some things you're doing to cope with stress? And from that conversation, it naturally surfaces. And I want to say that since prevention providers are listening to this potentially, it turns out that some of the greatest stigma for having these conversations are among providers.
Tell me more.
I think some of it is that, as I said earlier, some people get into this field because of their wounds. If not many people get into this field because of their wounds. And they jump from their childhood situation to this, but they haven't really done all the work because the career is their answer, which is fine. And it's great. And it's important. And it's a step in the direction of thriving. And it's a resilience strategy. It's perfect. Things happen in life later on that lead things to resurface. Having a child, seeing things happening that didn't happen to you, and you compare yourself, but why are those kids getting, whatever it happens to be. So when you're having these people come to our trainings, they think, I'm going to deliver this training to other people. And one of our biggest disappointments is that people come to our training, they've never done adult work. They've only worked with children, and they finally come to our training and go, oh, shoot, I really need to do my own work. And they don't do the training for other people because our trainings cause them to confront their own stigma. And so it's rare. It's a fascinating thing. And I go, well, hey, unintended but positive consequences.
Right. When just how that played out in my life, I first developed very unhealthy coping mechanisms. Then I got to work and tapped into my strengths and built very healthy coping mechanisms. Yet fast forward 3 years of sustained sobriety, I knew I wasn't quite where I wanted to be. And it became clear to me that I'd never actually unpacked, as I say it, my trauma or done anything with it. I just built healthy coping mechanisms, but it was still there. That the ick, the yuck, the suck was still there. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm married. We're eventually going to be having a baby. We weren't, expecting at the time. It's like, I better do that work now while I can, before I get more stressors added onto my life. So I get it.
There you go. That's beautiful. See that's like you are thinking about your future self, which doesn't happen for children. They don't have the capacity to think about their future self. So why aren't we doing this work with adults who can begin to think about their future self?
Right. Well, and it can be as simple as in Missouri doing a conference, just talking about building your resilience toolbox, just like a breakout session. So only like 45 minutes, but I had them do what I call the A game, B game. And it was just, I first introduced the concept of resilience makers and resilience breakers. And then, okay, let's create a list of, what are the things that help you bring your A game, be at your best? Then, okay, what are those things that cause you to bring your B game? And I boom, there you go. You just made a list of some of your resilience makers and breakers. And the reflection, taking time to actually name those and identify those I feel like we don't do that as adults. But we
are doing it. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Can I steal that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, everybody
absolutely.
here, you can steal that.
Yes, it's out there. And actually I have a PDF on my website, free PDF you can download, and it'll walk you right through that. Then it's also got the best self activity, which is really powerful in me. It's what pointed out to me like a 2x4 upside the head that alcohol was the biggest thing taking me away from being my best self. So it was like a 2x4 upside the head. So yeah, those are all there in a PDF.
Will you have that in the show notes so people can know where to get that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yeah,
great.
Absolutely. I want to talk about
well, hold on. There's something I want to make sure we did. Because you asked, I talked about prevention providers. Sometimes they're getting into this work to deal with their own wounds. There's another very important thing that we need to talk about, and I'm sorry we're taking this long to get to it. People who work in this field are undersourced. Especially now, right? But always. The turnover is amazing. But most importantly, if you're working in this field, there's a likelihood that you will have compassion fatigue, exposure, secondary trauma, burnout, job overload, role conflict. And so the other piece to note here is that it's a fascinating arc of destiny. If you are truly in this field and you love this work, think about it. You might have come into it to deal with wounds, and then you go into a work setting or occupation that's not, shall we say, highly resourced. So it's like a double punch. And so you, like Dave is a great role model. Take the time, step back, do your own work, figure out what your A game and B game is, be your best self. If your employer is not doing it for you, if you are a leader, if you are a workplace manager or owner of a prevention agency, please don't just do an annual retreat for your employees. Bring these tools in on a regular basis. Have these conversations. Make sure you get an EAP if you can, or collaborate with your local United Way or 211 to make sure your staff get the resources they need. Because we need you. We need this people. We need these people. And I hope that when you listen to this, that everything we're saying is taken in the vein of support.
Absolutely. And it's that under-resourced is kind of where I wanted to go as far as talking about norms. In that, when I was a police officer, when I was in other previous jobs before working for myself, I was busy. Prevention leaders, folks listening, are busy, a lot on our plates. And then if leadership was to bring in, hey, we're doing this new wellness initiative, you've got to do X, Y, and Z, it would first present as a burden, like, oh, another thing. And so that's where I really wanted to talk about making it a norm, a part of your culture, that wellness, these activities, conversations, they're just a part of who we are and what we do, not once a year, hey, I appreciate you, here's some pizza. But I wanted to really thoughts on that, being very intentional about the norms that you're cultivating in your organization.
There's so many things. I mean, there are lots of tools out there to do that. I'll give you a couple of quick tips. I mean, we always bring at the beginning of every one of our meetings, and we try to do this as much as we can with our clients, we do a presence check-in. We do that 1 to 10. And if people have a low number, we make sure they get an opportunity to share if they need to. They don't have to. And people don't have to give a number. They just, here's where I'm at. But it's setting that stage. And that could take 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes sometimes. But it's a very important thing to establish as what Judd Allen, who's done a lot of work on healthy cultures, calls a touch point. So there are many different touch points. That's one way. A number of our clients do book studies. So we have a number of books. We have Raw Coping Power, Best Self at Work, Heart-Centered Leadership, our Quest for Presence. And a book study allows you to have continuity. So norms are, by definition, continuous. They're ongoing. They're routine. So you have to set those things up. Some managers or leaders have their own brand of a daily check-in or a weekly check-in where it's more conversational, it's more transformational rather than transactional. And we encourage people to be creative around that. But the most important thing is authenticity, that as a manager or leader, that we have what we call, and we talk about this in our manager resilience training, 4 paths of the ripple effect. And those include, number 1, role modeling, right? So it's not about these tactical things. It's more like how you show up, and are you taking care of yourself, for example.
Live by example to lead by example.
That's role modeling. The other way is advocating for wellness. That is, we're going to do this. We have a client who now has given $50 a month for YMCA membership. Or whatever it happens to be, but it's not episodic, it's continuous. So advocating and promoting health in a genuine, authentic way. The other way is what we call heart-centered leadership, which is treating people nicely. The way stress shows up for me is grumpiness. In fact, for Halloween, I went as Bubble Guppy's Grumpfish. And so I have to compensate for that sometimes. Grumpy old men. And so you have to work at, if I'm going to be a certain way, how do I compensate for that in how I treat people? And there's so much there. I'm a big fan of humble inquiry. Throughout this conversation, I'm throwing out things, but Edgar Schein and Peter Schein's book, Humble Inquiry, where it's not a culture of telling, it's a culture of asking. And the 4th path of the ripple effect is creating the work environment, the physical and social environment. So, hey, guys, 5 o'clock, we're out of here, right? Or these lunch breaks are not to be in your office or whatever it happens to be. So the point of that is that you create those norms with this idea of an intentional future ripple effect. I'm not just doing these because I'm supposed to do them. I'm doing them because I have an intention to turn them into a norm with the support and the voice of my people.
And I would add to continue to reinforce them, to keep them top of mind. So like one example that I try to do with my team is tell them that we will not have emergencies. You will never need to reply to an email after business hours, nights and weekends, to the point where I'll even not send them emails. If I happen to be working on a weekend, I'll schedule it to send Monday morning because I don't want to tempt them or to show, well, Dave's working, maybe I should too. But I try to always remind them of that as well, just to continue to kind of reinforce that norm, that expectation.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot, but behavior, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Behavior.
So we're winding down on time, but I've had an idea since we've been talking, not fully formulated. So let's wrestle with it before we close out if you're game. I feel like you are.
A game, man. You've already told me I got to bring my A game.
Yeah. So out of the pandemic and the remote work, one of the, I'll say, best practices or tips was to create a working with yourself, like user manual. So I made a working with Dave user manual that I can share with clients, partners, and subcontractors. And so now with our conversation, I wonder what that would look like as a reason to do some guided self-reflection, but then also help create, better collaboration and better teamwork within your organization, and what kind of ripple effects that could have on culture and prevention and wellness.
So it clarifies. So the working with Dave user manual. So I think you've sent me this. It's been a while, where it's a couple of pages and it just says, here's Dave, here's how I work, here's how I work best.
Yes. Here's how I work best, my leadership style or preferences, my communication preferences, talking about, how, like, what caused me to bring my A game, what caused me to be my B game.
And so your question is, how could that tool be used to, I'm going to just make sure I understand the question.
How could that tool and or the process of creating that tool be used to help shape culture and or workplace prevention and wellness?
Oh, it's a great, I mean, you can build a whole training program, retreat, just on that itself. So I want to go back to this idea of ontological well-being and destiny. What we actually do something like this. We have a tool similar, where what allows you to be your best self, and we have a list, and then they select that and then they share with each other, right? Something like that. In the context of a workplace, that could be done by pairing people up and doing exactly like, here's what I said, what did you say? But giving them a lot of guidance on what really listening or active listening looks like. And then after they're done, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes a pair, you debrief, this is what we do. And you go, what did you like about how your partner listened to you? And then you tell them, don't tell us, tell them. So what they're doing is, I like that you. And so people are starting to give each other recognition and feedback in the moment in a genuine way. And then we also ask, how did it feel in your body to listen? What did you notice happened in your body as you listened? And then everyone goes ahead and does that. And then you share in the group. And then you go ahead and you switch and you have other people do that. So that simple tool could be optimized. And at the end of whether you take an hour or half day or retreat, however you do that, at the end of that, you go, so what came out of this that we want to bring forward? And how can we do that? And what kind of commitments can we make to do that? So the idea of ontological well-being is that, how is my life an ongoing project? How is it going? What does it look like in the future, right? How can I see myself in the future continuing in this way? So it's that future casting. And then once you've done that, how are we doing? What does our life together look like in the future, right? And there are a whole variety of organizational development tools that already do that. Future search, appreciative inquiry. But the point is that's the underlying idea, is that you're bringing some intentionality. And I want to make a quick point there and say that with climate change and disaster recovery, these kinds of tools are what's needed, going back to prevention, when organizations are faced with downsizing, when they're faced with budget cuts, and the future of that and the uncertainty and the volatility of what's happening, that's even more a reason to do this, because you're telling your people, we care about us, we care about you. So let's take some time here. That is the best preparation for disaster recovery. It's the best preparation for critical incidents. So it's best preparation for active shooter, whatever it is, because what you're doing is we're working together, and you entrain people, you create some syncopation by getting them together, and you can do it virtually. We've done it virtually. So I think it's a great tool. It's how you contextualize and optimize it. I hope that's answering your question.
Yeah. Oh no, it's just a curiosity, a thought, a thread to be pulled on and see where it led. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think now you have a new tool that you can market and sell and make a lot of money. Everybody, Dave Clausen's future deliberation tool is now available to you at very low cost.
Yes.
And
and if you want to see the current Working with Dave user manual, just drop me a message on social media or an email, and I'll gladly share the Working with Dave user manual. Not gonna lie, it was kind of fun putting it together. It was.
Well, I think, so we first started talking, 3 years ago, maybe 4. And so we're still here. And I think it's part of that thread that we're not alone, right? That there's a commonality. I hope anyone listening to this picks up on that same commonality and find whoever it is in your life that is going to pull you to your future A-game.
I just had flashback. I don't play video games, but that EA Sports little voiceover, it got me there with that one. Bring your A game. Yes, and I could ask questions. I've got a list of them, but we should probably let our listeners go for right now and leave this as a to be continued. How's that sound?
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate it. We touched the surface.
Yes, just starting to create ripples across the surface of prevention in the workplace and thriving and bringing your A game. All right, well, cool. Thanks much. And I'll go ahead and record, and we will keep on keeping on doing our thing.
Blessings.
Thank you for listening to the Prevention Leaders Podcast with Dave Clausen. Since prevention is better together, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this and other episodes with a friend. If you have a topic idea or guest suggestion, follow us on social media or email us at info@preventionleaders.com.